Week 6 waiver wire is here, and it's an interesting one, Dave Kluge, because there is a lot of fool's gold on this waiver wire this week, but then there are some gems in here. I know that's like the overused terms, fool's gold and gems, but there really are. There are some players in this that we are going to put as priority ads, other players that were like, you can probably just pass on them. So I know we're going to be talking about a lot of these players throughout this, but not every single one of them is a player that you need to go out and spend your fab on.
Yeah, this is just another kind of quiet week. And I think a lot of this is just that the average fantasy football manager has gotten so sharp that people are playing weeks ahead. And that's what we're trying to do is like find those little bitty usage trends that like the little breadcrumbs that will lead us to a bigger workload. But the problem is these guys are getting picked up well before they break out. So it's not like the guy that has 200 yards that we're saying this is the guy you need to go out and get. That guy's rostered on most leagues. So we're trying to always be, 2, 3 weeks ahead of the curve because that's just the fantasy football climate that we play in these
It's crazy.
days.
I tweeted this out yesterday. And I was like, maybe weekly waivers are just about the friends we made along the way. Because week 2, it's Hollywood Brown. Week 3, it's Wandale Robinson. Then it's Trey Benson. Then it's Woody Marks. And
hmm
it's just like, you could almost get to a point where you're just a fantasy football nihilist and you just don't believe in anything and you don't care about anything. And it's a, yep, okay, put two hands up, Dave. Put two
I've
hands
been
up for
there.
both of us, man. Because like, every
Yeah.
week there's a priority ad, and every week that priority ad disappoints in one way or another, and sometimes out of our control. But we don't have to commiserate too much here. There are two priority ads, I think, this week. They're both the same position, and I want to talk about each of them. Let's start with Mason Taylor, tight end for the New York Jets, rookie tight end. We've talked about him throughout rookie season, the NFL draft. He's got the bloodlines of Jason Taylor. Um, Dave, he's been impressive. Everything has been getting better and better for him. 80% snap rate this week, running a route on 75% of passes dropped back. Target rate just keeps rising every single week for him. 27% target rate this week. 18 receptions on 25 targets over the last 3 weeks. Third highest amongst tight ends. Is this? I think this is the highest priority waiver wire ad because this feels like the most sustainable role going forward, even though it's not in a great offense for Mason Taylor.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many people out there. We're recording on Monday morning, so we don't know what Travis Kelsey is going to do tonight, but it's been disappointing so far. Mark Andrews has been disappointing. TJ Hawkinson, Juwan Johnson, who was like the big week one waiver wire ad. Every tight end this year has been very well, not
Most.
every tight end, but even like Brock
He's
Bowers,
not playing.
Brock Bowers is
Yeah.
missing time now. Like, yeah, it has been brutal this year for tight ends. So I think Mason Taylor, this is a guy that we talked about. Like, if you were doing a two tight end build, he was a good target. And then he picked up that ankle injury and didn't do much through the first couple of weeks, but he seems healthy now. 19 targets over the last 2 weeks. And he's just a very good player. I thought this guy should have been a first round pick. I thought he was going to Kansas City at the end of round one to kind of be that heir apparent for Travis Kelsey. He is still very young, but he already looks like a polished tight end. It's not just the receiving either. He can block, he
Yep.
can get dirty in the run game. Like, he can kind of do it all. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, like, it's the Jets offense. He's got to compete with Garrett Wilson. And this was kind of my argument in the preseason. And I'm just going to go back to it now. Cole Kmet was the tight end 7 2 years ago with Justin Fields. Like, Justin Fields is going to look at his number one read, whether that's DJ Moore or Garrett Wilson. If he's not open, he's going to look to his number 2 guy, which is either Cole Kmet or Mason Taylor. And if that's not open, he's going to take off running. So there's going to be target volume here. I'm not worried about Josh Reynolds or any of the other guys. Mason Taylor feels like he could very easily finish this year as a top 10 tight
Yeah, I
end.
mean, already being at 18 receptions on the season right now, he was not really considered one of those receiving tight ends coming out of LSU. He was considered a very balanced tight end that can do it all. And he ended up in the perfect spot with the New York Jets where he can be second on this team in targets going forward, at least, right? And it all depends on what this team does with Brees Hall. But the way the tight end landscape is, like, this is one of the few players that you look and you say, okay, the way that things are shaking out on a target basis per week, reception basis, the snap share, all of it, this is something that is sustainable. It's not one of these guys that's just shown up and got a couple of touchdowns over the last few weeks. And even if Justin Fields is taken out, Mason Taylor is still a guy that the coaching staff has talked about saying we need to keep getting him more involved. And I just don't think you put that genie back in the bottle. Even if for any reason Justin Fields is no longer the starting quarterback at some point in the season, I don't think Mason Taylor becomes a guy that you're all of a sudden dropping and getting rid of anymore.
Yeah, and I think, there's also like some context as always with like the not a pass catching
It's
tight end.
LSU.
I've heard that as well. But if Yeah, it's LSU. Like, he was competing with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So, like, of course, he didn't pull a huge target share. Like, this is an offense that really builds around their wide receivers. They had two
Well,
superstar
it,
first
it's it
round
was
wide
it was more
receivers on
about
that
like his
offense.
build, because you'll get like the Elijah Arroyos where it's almost like that's all they can do is be the pass catching guy, and then you'll get the people that say, well, his frame, his athletic profile really lend towards being the receiving guy, whereas like Taylor's kind of a more balanced guy. But I mean, like you were saying, there's a ton of competition there, and he dispelled all the athleticism concerns too.
And I also think that, like, that being a more traditional tight end, I feel like the pendulum has kind of swung back
Right.
and forth over the last 10 years throughout, like, the tight end discourse. Is like, we used to think, like, oh, that guy that just, like, is a pure receiver with a tight end next to his name is the guy you really want. And that dates back to, like, the Jimmy Graham days, because we were searching for that guy and he was like a unicorn. But then more teams started to develop those types of guys. And we have seen now Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts, like, they need to be in a perfect situation for it to work out. Where Mason Taylor, being more of a traditional tight end, he gets those mismatches that we want to see. Like, he is a good blocker, so they have to put middle linebackers on him, which he can beat deep downfield. So I think that, like, we've kind of, as I said, like, the tight end discourse has kind of swung back and forth over the years. But now I think we're at the point that we actually do want these guys that are tight ends, that aren't just like glorified receivers in a tight end uniform. We want the guy who could actually be a tight end and draw those mismatches from the defense. And that's exactly what Mason
So let's
Taylor
say you're a
does.
tight end needy fantasy football team. Mason Taylor is available for you on the waiver wire. What's the approach there in terms of free agent auction budget? Your fab. What is it that you're looking at here? I know it's not a one size fits all answer, but how would you be approaching this, Dave?
Yeah, I think if you're tight end needy, and I think even if you drafted early a tight end, you might still find yourself being tight end needy because of some of the names that we talked about earlier. But like 12 to 15%. This isn't like an injury away running back with league winning upside. I don't think this guy even really has the ability in this offense to really crack like that top three. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see, at least with Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson on the team, a Brock Bowers or a Trey McBride type of season. I think what you're hoping for is that he can get a little bit of touchdown luck. He'll have the volume there to pad his floor. And I think the best case scenario is just what we saw from Cole Kmet in 2023, like a top six, a top seven season. So I think like 12 to 15% is
Yep.
about where I'm comfortable. I wouldn't want to go too
Yeah,
much higher
I
than that.
agree. And I also think that if you are going to place a bid on Mason Taylor, there's another player here that you can put as your secondary bid. And this is the other priority waiver wire ad that I'm looking at as well. It's Theo Johnson, who's available in 90% of leagues, tight end for the New York Giants. Dave, it's been a very different season for him now with Jackson Dart taking over. And I think you can also say, too, like there's obviously Malik Neighbors being out, just swings the pendulum of the direction that this offense goes and how the targets get distributed. But he's got 12 targets, 9 receptions, only 50 yards, though, but 3 touchdowns since Jackson Dart took over. Jackson Dart has thrown 3 touchdowns. All three went to Theo Johnson. But Theo's leading the team in receptions over this span since Dart took over. I see him as a bit more of a speculative ad, but the way he's getting used in the red zone, the relationship that is kind of being forced there out of necessity with he and Jackson Dart is something that is kind of intriguing. I think I'm putting him just behind Mason Taylor in terms of priority, but I'm probably willing to spend like 10 to 12% of my fab on Theo Johnson at this point as well if I'm tight end needy.
Yeah, 12 targets over the last two games with Jackson Dart. That's encouraging usage. And this is a guy that we've been excited about since he came into the league. 6'6, 260, 98th percentile
Right.
size adjusted speed. He is an athlete, and that's what you want to see at the tight end position. Jackson Dart, a little rough around the edges still, but I
There's some
still have
Tebow
faith in
going
him
on
just
there.
continuing to develop.
It's a little
There
nicer.
definitely is, but, pushing the ball deep downfield, I mean, not accurately and not well, but, like, we saw a lot of pass attempts flying 35
Right.
plus yards downfield, and just the threat of him doing that does open up a lot of the underneath stuff, and we see this often. These, like, young rookie quarterbacks with the rookie or the year 1 guy that they kinda connect with on the 2nd or 3rd team early in camp, and they have this chemistry with. I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing right now with Theo Johnson, so I definitely prefer Mason Taylor of the two. I don't expect Theo Johnson to keep catching a touchdown every single week, but yeah, there's something here. And then Darius Slayton also picked up an injury, so I mean, Malik Neighbors is out. Darius Slayton might miss some time as well. Wandale Robinson not really doing anything to write home about. Theo Johnson could end up being the guy that we care about most in fantasy in this
Yeah, I would
offense.
say these two guys are the highest priority ads, especially with how bad the tight end position is. But Dave, there's another position that every single week everyone's always looking for replacements or streamers or what it might be. It's the running back position. And there's a guy that I'm going to try to lump him in a little bit here with the other priority ads, and it's mostly because of the timing of it right now. Brashard Smith, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, if he is available on your waiver wire and you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, just go and check and see if he's there. Because especially with the way most fantasy leagues are right now, you don't have to wait for a bid. You don't have to wait for anything to clear. You can just add him to your roster prior to tonight's Monday Night Football game. So I'd go and stash him now. I just did that prior to this recording. But we saw season high snap rate and targets in week 4. Obviously, it was a weird game script game because they're leading against the Ravens by so much. But Isaiah Pacheco's been bad. Kareem Hunt has been bad. The Chiefs, both coaching staff and Patrick Mahomes have mentioned they want to get Brashard Smith more involved. They've been very complimentary of him. Going up against Jacksonville tonight, it's a team that's not great against specifically pass-catching running backs. So this could be the perfect time to deploy Brashard Smith in a larger role. And if you wait until after tonight's game, it just might be too late.
Yeah, agree there, especially like if you've got Xavier Worthy kind of picking up that weird questionable tag, getting off the plane
Yep.
with a swollen ankle. Like this could be your flex pivot if you're really, really desperate. But yeah, Jeff Bell and I, we talked about Brashard Smith for like 15 minutes last Tuesday and kind of going back and forth. I'm buying into this. Jeff, not so much. But, I just see a young guy who is also very new to the running back position, like went to SMU playing wide receiver and switched to running back midway through his collegiate career. And he talked about during OTAs and training camp, he was like, there's just so much to take in that like I'm struggling to get up to speed right now. That's why we didn't see any touches in week 1. And then week 2, we see a little bit more in week 3, a little bit more in week 4. And that's what I'm looking for with these rookies. And we'll talk about Isaiah Bond later, but the same exact thing where it's just like every single week, just one extra carry and one extra target. And that starts building on itself. We've also seen Andy Reid historically doesn't like putting too much on a rookie's plate too early. We always kind of see these like part-time, hyper-efficient roles, and then they explode over the second half. So Brashard Smith, I don't know if I'm feeling like putting him in my lineup tonight. I feel like that's a little bit risky, but definitely one of those guys that you want to keep stashed because if he comes on over the second half of the year, once they've got their full arsenal with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and everybody else, it could really open up the underneath stuff for Brashard Smith where we could see him in a Jerick McKinnon-esque sort of role.
Yeah, I'm in a way, I have my foot in both camps here. Like I do agree with Jeff Bell in a little bit here that I don't think that Brashard Smith is some sort of outstanding runner that solves all the problems for the Kansas City Chiefs. Nor did I think going into this season that he wins the running back job outright or a large role outright. The problem has been is that the other running backs on this team have been so bad. Right. The offensive line and the run blocking has not been good. We're seeing sort of I'm going to keep using this terminology. I don't know why. The swing of the pendulum here for the Chiefs offense where it's looking better. Patrick Mahomes looked good last week. The passing game seems to be getting itself going. And so you start to wonder if we can deploy Brashard Smith in the passing game a bit and convert that into some good running game usage. Even if it's just 10 or 12 touches in a game, if he becomes the leading running back in this offense based off of that, that's worth having on your team. Even if you're never going to start him, it's worth having on your team to see where it goes.
Especially like we saw with Jerick McKinnon, like he wasn't getting any run on the ground, but like Kareem Hunt at this point in his career, he can catch the ball, but that's about it. Like he's going to catch the ball and fall over. Isaiah Pacheco has never been a good pass catcher. And I think the main out with Brashard Smith is that late in the year, he ends up in one of those running back roles where he's getting 6 to 8 targets per game. And he's getting that creative usage near the goal line that made Jerick McKinnon so valuable. So I think that's really the out. I don't expect Brashard Smith to be a 20 touch per game guy that runs away with this backfield, but being a converted wide receiver, knowing how Andy Reid likes to deploy these guys near the line of scrimmage, I think that's the upside case with Brashard Smith is just that he ends up becoming a target magnet.
And honestly, if I am Andy Reid, which obviously I'm not, I'm trying to see everything that I have in this backfield as the season goes on, because if I do need to make a move, I want to be able to make that move as soon as I can, get everyone up to speed. So if that means I'm throwing out Brashard Smith a little bit more in this game, seeing what I have and saying, okay, let's go and make a move for a veteran like an Alvin Kamara. Let's go and let's trade some nice draft capital for a Breece Hall, and let's really get this offense humming, I'm doing that. So it's just, I know it's a little narrative-y, but these are things to follow as we move along here with these players. Speaking of Alvin Kamara, next running back on this list is going to be Kendre Miller, who's available in 72% of leagues. And Dave, this feels, we've done 5 weeks of waivers. This feels like week number 5 where we have talked about Kendre Miller. And
Dating back to last year, this is week number 22. I mean, we haven't stopped talking about this guy since he came into the league. Just such a
Yeah, I
big
mean,
fan of the
same,
talent.
same. I loved him coming out of TCU. Injuries have been a big problem. Coaches have also been a big problem, depending on what year it is.
Fake injuries by
Yep,
coaches have been a
yep.
big
But when they
problem,
get
perhaps.
combined, it just gets weird. But Alvin Kamara, he's seeing his snap share drop in each week over the last 4 weeks here. It's down to 56%. And when you just see a role that's decreasing for an aging veteran, you have to pay attention to this. On top of it, the Saints finally won. And I know we always make the joke that coaches don't care about your fantasy football team, but they really don't care about your fantasy football team or the usage of a player if a team wins. And if they start winning and Kendry Miller is running the ball more and this is a split backfield, they're going to keep going back to that same equation over and over and over. Kendry Miller took over a lot of the short yardage work here, saw more overall carries than Alvin Kamara, but Kamara retained his receiving role, Dave. And so it might be a little ugly. You might not actually have like true value out of either of these guys as starters. Maybe Kamara if he falls into the end zone. But just like we said about Brashard Smith, Kendry Miller needs to be rostered in 100% of leagues. I still don't understand how he's 72% available.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I think that he just kind of gets like people look at him as like this veteran who's never really done it, but we talked about it a lot this offseason. He is still so young, like just turned 23 years old, still has a lot of future ahead of him. And yeah, we've seen his snaps go up every single week 15%, 15%, 27%, 31%, 39%. But it's not just the opportunity, it's also the efficiency. And when you see a young player who is being efficient with his touches and you see that role growing, that's not something you want to ignore. Right now, he has a full yard more in after contact per attempt metrics than Alvin Kamara does. He has over twice as many missed tackles forced per attempt than Alvin Kamara does. He's averaging more yards per route run than Alvin Kamara is. I mean, be it as a receiver or as a rusher, right now Kendry Miller is just the more efficient running back, and still young, talented guy. He's had the wow plays kind of littered on his tape throughout the first couple of years of his season, but now we're seeing some consistent usage here. I've also seen, we're going to talk about the Chargers running back situation, of course, that if they, if Hampton misses any extended time, that they might be in the market for trading for an Alvin Kamara type of player. So I think that's really the hope here is that Alvin Kamara gets traded, which feels like we've been wish casting for the last 3 years and it's yet to happen. He is very much so a part of that Saints offense, but if he does get traded and they just open up the doors for a workhorse role for Kendry Miller, that's when we could really see him do what he did at TCU, which is just carry a team and be a very, very good running
I
back.
think that fantasy managers do need to be willing to go and roster him. Like I want to be looking at Kendry Miller the same way I'm looking at guys like Tyler Algier and some of these other players that are pretty much completely
Mhm.
rostered everywhere. You might look at the output throughout the season and say, well, these other guys are scoring more. It's about the role. It's about the role and what is going to be sustainable going forward if that role reaches its full potential. And for Kendry Miller, if Alvin Kamara is traded, even if he's not, like there is a role that is here consistently week in and week out. Another guy who could be getting a bigger role as the season goes on here, and it's kind of already happened, but that's been due to injury. It's Isaiah Davis, running back for the New York Jets. Dave, he's available in 87% of leagues. The news on Braylon Allen is not just that he went on IR, but that he could miss over 8 weeks. He could be missing a lot of this season. I've seen reports it was 6+ weeks, then that became 8+ weeks, then I saw 8 to 12 weeks. Like, there's a possibility here where the Braylon Allen injury could be much worse than expected and could even miss the season if people are going to start speculating that. And so Isaiah Davis becomes another player, one of these backup running backs, injury away running back that you need to have, or trade away running back that you need to have. The Jets are the only winless team in the NFL, and I think at some point you do end up having to start making some sort of moves. Isaiah Davis is a guy he has a passing game role. 4 targets in week 5. He had that same passing game role last year too, as he started to get involved. And he was one of the
Mhm.
guys always mentioned to be in this 3-headed backfield. Weird narrative to follow here, Dave. Actually, I want to hear your thoughts on Isaiah Davis. Now we can talk about the narrative thing.
He's the next guy up. Braylon Allen is hurt. I think that's kind of it for it when it comes to Isaiah Davis for me. Like, there's nothing really that excites me all of that much. There's some fun per route metrics if we want to look back at last year, but I mean, this guy, it's been such a small sample size with anything he's done that there's nothing I can get too excited about. I think he's just kind of an injury away stash, and I don't think you're looking at any standalone value here as long as Brees Hall is there.
So Isaiah Davis, one of those guys, when he has had opportunity, he's popped in certain certain games where he's had that. I wouldn't say that he popped by any means this last week, but Dave, there is something that's brewing in New York, and I talked about how the team is 0-5, and let's go down narrative street for a second here. Breece Hall has had some very interesting quotes over the last couple weeks here, or actually over the last week, excuse me. He's been vocal about his complaints or his thoughts, his emotions, and the press is kind of just straight up asking him about changes of scenery. Now, he is not saying that he wants to be traded or needs to be traded, but the quotes lately have been interesting. The first one is teams shoot themselves in the foot and then we come back and shoot ourselves in the head, which is just an absolutely nuts quote to say, like coming out of a loss. And that was after the Dolphins game, I believe. The other one was this after this last loss. I'm in my 4th year and I don't have a lot of time left to prove what I want to do and who I can be in this league. He was asked specifically if a change of scenery would help him. He did, to put the context on this, he did say, nah, I think we just need to win. But then he went on to say, I'm in my 4th year. I don't have a lot of time left to prove what I want to do and who I can be in this league. So Dave, if we're speculating here, what are the odds that you think Breece Hall actually gets moved during the season?
I think if Braylon Allen was healthy, it would be much, much higher. But this is just the last year of his deal. I don't know. I can't imagine them trading Breece Hall away and just giving the full workload to Isaiah Davis. I think they would have been okay kind of splitting it between Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis because they have very complementary skill sets. But my guess is that Breece Hall is probably just going to, to the dismay of fantasy managers everywhere, just remain a Jet on this final year and then hit the market next season.
Yeah, we can't have nice things, apparently.
It would be great. I mean, I'd love to see Breece Hall a Chief and Isaiah Davis with a full workload in New York. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, if the Chiefs come in and let's say they offer a 2nd round pick to the New York Jets for Breece Hall,
then Breece Hall, he's going to be on a plane in
right?
an hour.
And like the Chiefs and some of these other competing teams, I don't think that they are that scared to do that. And maybe a 2nd round pick's a little pricey for a player on the last year of his deal. Maybe it's probably closer to like a 3rd round pick. But I mean, the Jets are 0-5. They have brand new staff. I think they're willing just to start making some changes. So it's one of those things to keep in the back of your head. Last 2 running backs, I'm just going to kind of lump them together here because that's what their team is doing. Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal, running backs for the Los Angeles Chargers, each are 98 and 100% available in sleeper leagues, respectively. It's just looking like a committee here. We got the report about Amari Hampton leaving the game in a boot. We haven't gotten any further reports on how much time he could potentially miss or how severe the injury is.
Report said a sprained ankle this morning, so we don't know.
It could
high ankle, but high low. But like we never really see a running back play the week after spraining an ankle, so I'd imagine we're getting at least one.
I mean, we typically don't. You're right. Anything's possible, so we'll see what happens there. The Chargers, though, it's going to be hard to get a read on this. It feels a lot like the Arizona Cardinals backfield, where probably going to get Hassan Haskins on early downs, Kamani Vidal on passing downs. We got to see Kamani Vidal get some garbage time work. He got some goal line work. Dave, I don't know that I want to waste my fab on either of these guys unless I'm extremely, extremely desperate and it's a deep league with deep waivers.
Yeah, and like I just personally am not the biggest fan of Kamani Vidal. Just that type of running back. Like he's short, but he's also thin, and he also doesn't have great speed, and he doesn't break tackles. Like there's just a ton not to like there. I mean, 3 broken tackles and 53 career touches is very, very
don't have to break tackles when they can't touch you, dog. Back. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but they do touch him too. This is a problem. Like, I think he's a good pass catcher. My guess is that we would see some sort of split here where Hassan Haskins, but also like my guess was proven wrong yesterday when we saw Kamani Vidal in there in the goal line situation, but also looked terrible in that goal line situation. So we'll see if that carries over. But Hassan Haskins, we got to remember, like, he's got history with Jim Harbaugh dating back to Michigan. Like when Jim Harbaugh was the Michigan head coach, Hassan Haskins was a part of that team. So he knows Jim Harbaugh. He knows the offense in and out. I want to say, like, I want to figure this one out because they're playing Miami next week. And we know that could be a smash matchup, just like we saw the Cardinals against Tennessee this week. It was a smash matchup. So you want to get this one right. And all of the things that Jim Harbaugh said when Amari Hampton first went down, they asked about bringing in, or when Najee Harris first went down, they asked about bringing in a backup to back up Omari and Hampton, and he said like, no, we've got Kamani Vidal there, and he's the next guy up, and he can step up if that situation arises. So it sounds like Harbaugh has really kind of been saying that Vidal is going to be the guy. But I think the biggest thing to talk about here with the Chargers offense is just how different they have looked over the last 2 weeks without Joe Alt as they did in the first 3 weeks with Joe Alt. Like they were able to kind of get past this Rashawn Slater injury and still look like a good team. But now losing Slater and Joe Alt, it clearly is impacting this team negatively. So I think there could be something here in the short term. But I think what I'll probably do is let everybody else bid heavily on Kamani Vidal, and then I'll just throw $1 or 2 on Hassan Haskins and see if I get him
I
instead.
think the TLDR of this is just if you really need a running back this week, go ahead and put a couple of bucks on each of these guys, see which one you get, and good luck to you, especially with them going up against Miami. You can probably get some sort of production there.
But like you said, it's similar to the
Yeah.
Cardinals situation where so much last week was like, is it Michael Carter? Is it Amari DeMercado? Is it Bam Knight? And had it not been for that
The
goal
answer was
line
yes.
fumble by DeMercado, the answer would have
Yeah.
been all three. Exactly. So like sometimes it's okay to just say like, hey, I'm going to fire my guys up in a good matchup. So I'd probably lean Kamani Vidal, but I'm not going to want to pay what everybody else is going to want to pay. And I think this is one where like it's a good enough matchup against Miami that you can kind of throw Haskins in there as a what the heck flex and hope that it works out
Yeah, I
for
want to
you.
check something really quick on Hassan Haskins here. Yeah, because the snap share has been pretty abysmal throughout the season, but I mean, even that was even
Mhm.
after Najee Harris went down. We're looking at 8% snaps there. And just to give the contrast here for people with Vidal, yeah, even worse though. 0% snaps for most of the week, 3% snaps even after Najee went down. Finally, we see 21% snaps. So if we're going based off previous workload, it does look like Haskins has had more of the workload then, but it's hard to get a read on this, especially because of the way game script went. You had a lot of garbage time. We don't quite know. Like we said, just throw a couple bucks on each of them. Uh,
Haskins also just feels like a Greg Roman, Jim
he's Gus
Harbaugh type of
Edwards.
running back. Kamani Vidal, I want to say, yeah, because what Kamani Vidal is like 210, 215 pounds or something like that. Haskins is on the right side at
Yeah.
225, same as Najee Harris, same as Amari Hampton, same as Gus Edwards. Like they really do like these big bruising backs. And I feel like that's why Haskins, like we've seen Vidal a little bit more involved, but I think that Haskins is the guy, like if they have to just like for 1 week lean on a guy, I think they'd probably lean on Haskins over Vidal. But again, like I'm pulling this out of nowhere. Like I don't talk to Jim Harbaugh. I don't know how this works out, but just like looking at historical tendencies, Hassan Haskins feels much more like a Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman running back than Kamani
Also,
Vidal
would not
does.
surprise me. We mentioned his name. It would not surprise me if they signed Gus Edwards to the practice squad and then elevated him for the game. And they've got 3 running backs.
I'd plug him in for 1 week
Yeah,
against Miami. You can get 150 yards and a touchdown from Gus
absolutely.
Edwards.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the wide receivers now. Top wide receiver, I think you and I both agree with this on the waiver wire list is going to be Isaiah Bond, who we talked about last week. And if you're just looking from the 1,000-foot view, it wasn't a highly impressive week, fantasy wise, but there are some peripheral metrics here that just continue to look good for Isaiah Bond. He's available in 74% of leagues. And we saw a very different Cleveland Browns team this past week with Dylan Gabriel at the helm. And like, is Dylan Gabriel like kind of good? Is he like decent?
I mean, dude, going on the road against Minnesota in an
I mean,
international game for your first
is he
start ever
decent?
is like a wild ask of any quarterback, and he hung in there and like he brought David Njoku and Harold Fannin to life. So yeah, I think, had this game been like in Cleveland, I think they probably would have won it, but like Minnesota got the extra week of rest out in Europe. Like this was a tough ask for a day 3 rookie getting his first start, but good on him for pulling it out. Or was it round 3? I can't remember. Whatever it was. So, like these quarterbacks don't
Yeah.
hit. So for him to do anything is
Yeah, I think it was
remarkable.
round 3. But yeah, man, with Isaiah Bond, this was a player like we talked about it last week. He's a guy that probably would have been a round 2 or day 2 pick in the NFL draft. I remember for most of the rookie scouting time, I had him ahead of Matthew Golden in my rookie rankings for a
Mhm.
lot of the year, and he was the top wide receiver at Texas until he got hurt. And a lot of the confusion is he going to be healthy going into the season? And then it became the whole legal issue thing, and that's why he wasn't drafted highly in the NFL draft and ended up being a guy that had to sign undrafted later. But as the season has gone on, we got like early reports that he might be the slot receiver, and then it's like, well, he's getting a lot of the snaps out of the slot, and it's, oh well, now the targets are going up, and they've gone up each week. 8 targets this past week. Usage is trending up, not just for slot work, but in 2 wide receiver sets ever since the Cedric Tillman injury. The Browns have a very easy schedule rest of season for wide receivers, and especially over the next few weeks. They've got Pittsburgh, then Miami, and then a couple of other good matchups. This is just, it's a talented player in a wide open opportunity. It might not be great, and you might end up with a lot of these, 2 receptions on 8 target weeks, but then there could be something that kind of rears its head down the line, Dave, where you're looking at a guy who's consistently getting 8 targets, and then those games turn into consistently 6 receptions, and he's got the 4.3 speed to make some impressive explosive plays down the stretch here.
Yeah, and I mean, we've just seen consistent usage growth in every single week. 1 target in week 1, 2 or 3 targets in week 2, 4, 6, 8 last week. I don't know if you saw me kind of not paying attention while you were talking,
Always.
Alfredo. I opened up Google Sheets and wanted to do some
Okay.
forecasting through week 17. So we went from 1, 3, 4, 6, 8. If we project that all the way out to week 17, pacing for
Jesus.
28 targets per game, Alfredo. I mean, my
Sheesh.
goodness, this guy is going to be an absolute league winner. If we add up what he does over the fantasy playoffs, we are looking at what is that? Almost 70 targets over that 3-week stretch. So obviously,
I know you are.
being a little bit,
I know you are.
silly
Take your
here,
tongue out
but
of your cheek.
he's trending up, and that's what we want to see. Like when you see a rookie just getting more targets every single week, that's something you want to chase here. Like led the team in targets, and sure it was only 2 of 29 receiving, but 8 targets for a guy who was signed off the street like 2 weeks before the season started. It's something I get excited about. And we did that show with Matt Waldman. We were talking about like some deep rookies that we like, day 3 guys, undrafted guys. And I remember him making the comp to Tyreek Hill. And of course, there's the on the field stuff that's reminiscent of Tyreek Hill, but we also have to remember that Tyreek Hill like fell late in the draft because of character issues. So this is another guy, with just game breaking ability when he's on the speed, or game breaking speed when he's on the field. We haven't really seen it turn out yet, but the usage is there, and it's only a matter of time before Isaiah Bond rips off a big play.
Now, I'm sure we're going to get people in the comments as well that Isaiah Bond really didn't have a big play until late in the game with 14 seconds left. You know what, guys? Garbage time counts too. Especially when you are the starter who has been there. It's not like he got subbed in and did something late in the game when he hasn't been on the field throughout the rest of the game here. Browns wide receivers only got 10 targets. 10 targets.
It was all tight ends. Yeah, it was the tight ends were heavily.
Excuse me, it might be 10
one.
receptions. Yeah, it was 10. 10 targets. Yeah, it was 10 targets, and he got 8 of them. It's just crazy. So, if the role continues to grow for Isaiah Bond, it could be something really good. A couple of other wide receivers here, Dave, that I think are interesting, but they really kind of feel, if we're going fall season here, they kind of feel like pumpkins. They'll just convert right back into guys that aren't going to be on your roster in a couple of weeks. So I want to ask your opinion here on Ryan Flournoy and Kendrick Bourne, both available in at least 85% of leagues or more. These are guys that had themselves some big weeks, but it's also been because starting wide receivers are injured and there's been changes to their offense. If you had to pick one of these guys that you're like, you know what, he's worth a waiver wire pickup, who are you going with here?
Taysom Hill. Like I don't want either of these wide receivers.
So
I'm gonna
none.
be honest. Like it was, yeah. We saw Kendrick Bourne. Like good for him. But I think that was just like no Ricky Pearsall, no Juwan Jennings, no George Kittle, no Brock Purdy, and they said like, hey, Mac, you played with this Kendrick Bourne guy when you were in New England. You guys have a connection, right? Let's nurture that. And I think that's kind of all that was. The Flournoy stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Shout out
Jeff
Bell.
Ryan Jeff
Flournoy,
is on cloud
he
9
loves
right
him from
now.
Ryan Flournoy. He was all over him during that rookie process a couple of years ago, and I'm really happy to see that Flournoy had a good game. But I think that is no CeeDee Lamb, no Kevontae Turpin, Garrett Wilson, or I'm sorry, Sauce Gardner was shadowing George Pickens in this game. I'm not really buying into that too much.
Yeah, it only took 2 injuries and how many games? Yeah, a lot of games. Like, and not trying to hate on Ryan Flournoy. He's a talented player. He did a lot with the opportunity he was given this week, and targets are for the most part earned. Like it's a good player. I just think with both these guys, it's exactly what you're saying. It's we're gonna look back if it maybe they get one more week of usage from each of these guys, like depending on how the injuries go for Turpin and the remainder of the Niners wide receivers that are all injured, basically. But yeah, like maybe we get one more good week out of Ryan Flournoy. But I don't think this is one of those situations where it's like genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. Like, the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson. Like there's only so many targets to go around, even if they are going to pass the ball a ton. And Kendrick Bourne, I think it's just once everyone's back, it's over.
You know what was a genie out of the bottle situation, Alfredo? Woody Marks, the young, talented running back, usurping the role from an old, dusty veteran. And yeah, spend 100% of your fab on Woody Marks just for what? Nick Chubb to be the RB1 again last week. So yeah, I mean, like, good luck trying to predict any of this. Sorry, I'm
None of
not
it
in different
matters.
crotchety old
Welcome
tone
to
this
the
morning.
show. Everything we're doing is irrelevant.
I will say, like, Ryan Flournoy, he's fun. He's
Yeah.
a spark plug. He's, you get the ball in his hand, but I think that what he does is everything Cavante Turpin can do, just not as well. And I think with Cavante Turpin being out, that's why we saw Flournoy in
Is
this
there
big
anything,
role.
has there been like a week of fantasy football that has ever made you just feel less relevant in your job than this past week? Where you're just like, we know nothing. None of it matters. Good luck. This
This one was
was
tough.
the
Yeah,
tough week,
this was
man.
a tough one. Like I couldn't even imagine. Like, good thing we weren't the ones pounding the table for Amari DeMercado, but like 2 touches, and one of them is nearly an 80-yard touchdown that he
Oh,
fumbles at the goal line. Like, this is just it's been a weird season so far. I'll just say that, but I do think, like, those who got Michael Carter off of off the waiver wire last week, I think that's the guy you wanna have. I mean, they were riding him like a workhorse. He looked pretty good in his opportunities. I don't know if DeMercado's gonna get a touch after
dude,
what
did you
happened there.
see it's Jonathan Gannon, right? I almost said Rich Gannon.
Jonathan
Jonathan
Gannon,
Gannon
yeah,
was lighting
he
him
like,
up.
slapped him.
I didn't see that in the video. I saw him just like I just saw him yelling
Yeah.
at him. I didn't see a slap.
No, as he's walking away, he, like, slapped him in the chest,
Oh,
and, like, not a friendly, like, "Oh, you'll get him next time." Like, it was weird, and
uh-oh.
I've seen a lot of ex-NFL players
Uh-oh.
commenting on it on Twitter this morning, like, "You don't put your hands on a
Yeah.
player like that." It was weird, and, I will say, maybe I'm the one, like, breathing into a narrative that isn't true right now. Maybe he was just like, "Hey, you'll get him next time," but he didn't look very happy in that video. It didn't seem like an encouraging slap.
Oh no. Yeah, you don't touch the players. That's a big no-no there. That's Urban Meyer vibes. Kicking players while they're stretching. Um
Yeah, just stay out of those college bars, Jonathan Gannon.
I don't even, let's not go down this
Sorry.
road. Let's not go down this road. Two other players from the wide receiver position that are just worth mentioning. I don't think we have to add too much here, but Jalen Coker, Jack Besh. Jalen Coker is available in 86% of leagues. He's returning from IR. We talked about him a couple weeks ago as well. I think even last week. Just could replace Leggett as the Z receiver, who's just really hasn't done a whole lot, despite what Eric Collins.
Hey, Leggett looked awesome yesterday. I gotta say, he looked good yesterday. Like, caught the touchdown, also had like a big catch on the final game-winning drive. I think that's what he needed, like, mentally to get back in there. I think he was really
I
beating
know
himself up. He's always been like a very
it's
emotional
hard to
player,
get
so I'm
excited
happy to
though.
see him out there making some big plays in
Yeah,
their
it's hard
first
to get
win.
excited for 2 catches. But Eric Collins, the play-by-play guy for the Panthers Dolphins game,
Sheesh. Yeah,
I
you needed a change of pants by
have
halftime.
never seen a guy that was so excited about an incompletion ever. Like this dude was loving every single play of it. And it was funny. Like Leggett gets his first, he gets a catch in the second half, and that's when Collins is like, "Are we about to see the breakout for Xavier Leggett? This could be the moment." Second down. I was just like, "What?"
Yep, he was into it.
It was great, man. It was great. I would love that much energy for each of these games. But Jalen Coker like does become an interesting player. He's either he could replace Leggett or he pushes Renfro out of the slot position there. We'll see what they end up doing. Jack Besh, the other guy, deep league speculative ad. I think a lot of this is just once again injuries force players to play. Being down by a ton of points gets players playing time. I know we saw.
You wanna know how bad it was for the Panthers? They like, Bryson Tremaine was a full-time
Yeah.
starter 2 weeks ago. Like, they are desperate for anybody, so Jalen Coker is walking right into a role when
Yeah.
he's back.
Okay, okay, fair. Because I was going to ask you about either of these guys. So it seems like out of the two, obviously Jalen Coker. So would you put? Let's do this in order: Jalen Coker, Ryan Flournoy, Kendrick Bourne, Jack Besh. What's the order for you? If you had to,
I
yeah.
I think you got it. I might go Jack Besh over Flournoy, but, yeah, I think Coker's the only one that I, like, really care about here. I don't think any of these other guys have,
Season
like,
long. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you're never going to be reliant on any of these guys. Where with Jalen Coker, like he could elevate the entire offense. He could be a full time player. He could be that secondary option on the Carolina Panthers. I don't think you could make that argument for any of these
And you
other
know what,
guys.
man? It's like for those of you that use Sleeper, phenomenal fantasy football app. It's great. It has actually made fantasy managers. I mean, I wouldn't say it's made them better, but it's definitely made things a lot easier for them to see which players are trending. I know that every fantasy app does that, but Sleeper's changed their interface this year a little bit, where you could always see what players were trending up and down, but now they've made it the default when you go to look at players. And seeing that Ryan Flournoy is the number 3 player trending in Sleeper right now as a guy to add, and it just seems like it's just more fool's gold for people. Um, mm. If you're listening to this show, don't go do that. All right, last couple players here to add. Tight ends. These are we already talked about the priority ads. These are some other guys, Dave, that it could be similar to what we talked about with some of these wide receivers, where it's like injury has let them get on the field a bit more. It might just be another week, but who knows? We got to talk about these guys because it could be a little bit more. Jake Tongus and AJ Barner. Let's see. For Tongus, touchdown each of the last 2 weeks. Kittle might be back in week 7. They've been a little ambiguous about what everything means, that they could open up the practice window after week 6, but that's a 21-day practice window. What does that mean for him to come back? Could it be week 8, week
Right.
9, whatever it is? And then Barner, this one's actually a little more interesting because it's 80% snap rate in 4 or 5 weeks, 7 targets this past week, 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Really, really good end zone target share for him. The next couple matchups are tough. There's Elijah Arroyo on the roster as well, who his role has been expanding. Do either of these guys interest you? I know we're talking about them, but not everyone we talk about is a player that we're actually targeting on waivers.
Yeah, I think if you're like in a dynasty league or if you're looking for somebody who could have like season long value, I do like AJ
Okay.
Barner a little bit better than Tongus. Tongus, I
I
always get it
think
wrong.
it's
I think it's
Tongus.
Tongus, but yeah, I think he's the guy because we have seen like a tight end is kind of the focal point of a Clint Kubiak offense, and we've seen kind of a mix between Barner and Arroyo, but it does seem like Barner is the one that they prefer. He's out in the field a little bit more, so I'd kind of lean towards him. But if you need somebody like this week, like if you've got a tight end on bye, or you lost somebody to injury, or you're just fed up with Mark Andrews and you can't do it again, I think Tongus is the guy that I do like. And we're recording this on Monday morning, so I haven't had time to go back and like watch film on every single game so far. But I have had time since this was a Thursday night football game to go back and watch this one. And Tongas, he does a pretty good
Yeah.
George Kittle impression. Like there aren't a lot of people out there that can do George Kittle things, but the chip blocks before releasing up the seam, the safety valve out in the flat, the plays after the catch, the mix between playing in line and playing in the slot, like had me fooled a couple of times where I'm like, that looks very George Kittle-esque. Of course, you're turning that dial from a 10 to like a 7, and that's kind of what you'd expect here. But we also saw the upside on Thursday night. So I think he's like the better short-term band-aid if you need somebody, but he's a pretty darn good tight end. And again, not one of these wide receivers and tight end clothing like we talk about. Like he is a good tight end who can do
So
tight
I got
end
to ask
things.
you then, are you taking either of these guys or Taysom Hill?
You know my
I
answer here. It's
I knew
Taysom
you were
Hill for
going to say that.
sure.
I knew you
Like,
were going to say
dude,
it.
I am so happy to see Taysom Hill back out there too. Like, I said it last year. I thought his career was over, and like, shame on me, as Jeff Bell said the other day. He said, "Shame on you
Assuming
for
that he's
treating
human.
Taysom Hill like a
Yeah.
mortal, right?" And like that's just it. Like this guy 10 months ago, like I saw that knee fold in half the wrong way. Like I saw a torn ACL and I just said, well, this guy's going into his age 35 season. It's been fun, but that is the end of the road for Taysom Hill. And then he just comes back immediately, like no limitations, taking carries up the middle, like just looking like Taysom Hill of old. So I think it was only like 14% of the snaps last week. We saw him in a very minor role, but I expect to see that grow. And then also you got to think about it, like with how bad the quarterback situation is here. Like we saw a pass attempt. I think we're going to see a little bit more of those pass attempts. So he gets that goal line running back role. He gets the passing down role. He gets to throw the ball every now and then. Taysom Hill definitely
Yeah,
picking him
how
up
dare
where I
you
can.
assume Taysom Hill's species here? He's not human. He can just do whatever he wants. Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
One other name I'll throw out there that I think we kind of skipped over is Bam Knight. Um, I think Mercado kind of
that's
lost
fair.
his
Yeah,
opportunity, which means Bam Knight would be the number 2 guy available in 100% of leagues right now. I mean, I'm just talking like throw in like a $0 fab bid if you miss out on the other guys. He's somebody that I'd be okay
Yeah,
having on my
that's
teams.
fair. That's good to. We don't want to overlook that as well. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know that DeMarcado gets that like any rollback. He already didn't have much of a roll. Like I don't think you recover from something like that.
I sent you the video on Twitter too. I think it's maybe like glanced at it and didn't realize how bad it is. Like he puts his hands on DeMarcado multiple times. I just rewatched it after we brought it up, and like it's
You know
messy.
what
It's
could
not
work?
good.
They trade him to the Patriots because the Patriots don't bench anyone for letting go of the ball ever. In fact, they just give them goal line
For real.
opportunities. Let's do that.
They're like playing with a greased watermelon out there. That was just like what I
I
don't
don't
understand.
understand
Like,
it, man.
uh,
Anyways, let's
yeah. You ever watch
yes.
Basketball? Did you
Yes,
ever
it's a
see that movie
classic.
where he's like, "I swear to God, you guys make fun of me 13 or 14 more times, and I'm out of here." Like that's Mike Vrabel talking to Ramondre. You fumble the ball 13 or 14 more times, and you're getting benched, buddy.
Really good reference. Really good drop. Speaking of drops, let's talk about some players to potentially drop here.
Look at
Some
that
guys
segue.
that we are less enthused with over the last few weeks, and it's not even just like a 1 week thing. It has become a trend. Dave, I'm gonna list the players, and I would love to get your thoughts on them. Jerry Judy, Mark Andrews, Jawan Johnson, Chris Rodriguez, Amari DiMercado, and with the injury now, Darius Slayton as well. I think the biggest names on this list that people are going to question, but also be like, yeah, I get it, is Jerry Judy, Mark Andrews, Jawan Johnson. Jer-
I'll throw TJ
sure, yeah,
Hawkinson in there too as another
yeah.
drop. I mean, like we saw two decent games with Carson Wentz, and those were still unplayable in fantasy. And we saw even worse performance with JJ McCarthy. So yeah, that's why we keep talking about like the Jake Tongases and like all of these buzzy tight ends on the waiver wire. Cause like I am so done with all of these dead zone tight ends
I
from
will
this
say
year.
I don't know that Hawkinson is droppable for me, which is why I left him off the list. I mean, just 5+ targets in each of the last 3 weeks, and I know a lot of it has just been Carson Wentz. I know it's not pretty, but it's like unless you are getting a Theo Johnson or a Mason Taylor, and even then, like we don't quite know what their roles are. I'd rather hold on to both and see where the trend goes, especially with Hawkinson going into the bye week. You might be forced to drop him. You know, that might be the thing. But if you are able to keep him on your bench and add one of these other guys and say, okay, now I can play the matchups and stream each week, you know, then I'm willing to go there. But Mark Andrews, I think it's over. I think it's over for Andrews. I think it's just gonna be too inconsistent for Jawan Johnson. Chris Rodriguez, it does seem like Bill Krosky Merritt has just taken that role finally, and eventually, and you know, like what we figured eventually would happen because he's the more explosive player. But yeah, I think all these guys are worth dropping.
Yeah. Did you mention Troy Franklin? He was another like
Troy Franklin
buzzy name that got
is
picked
like a
up by a
waiver
lot of
wire
people.
ad for a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
We're
See,
not there.
I'm kind of moving off it. They spread the ball so thin in that Denver offense that like I understand the allure of it, but I think he's more of a roster clogger than anything else. Then of course Braylon Allen too. I mean, if you got an IR spot, great. If not, I don't think there's any reason to hold on to Braylon Allen. Like he might not even be back. Like you talk about 12 weeks potentially, 8 to 12 weeks is the report that I saw. 12 weeks, that's the end of the fantasy season. So I don't think you're holding on to Braylon Allen for any reason at this point. Yeah, there's a lot of churn right now in fantasy, and you're just swapping out bad players for more bad
How do you
players. It
feel
feels
about
like.
Calvin Ridley now? We've talked about him as a drop. He has himself. Listen, it's a big week, right? It's not necessarily something I would say is sustainable week in and week out to go 131 yards on 5 catches. The 10 targets is nice, but this is not something that we've seen throughout the season from him. And still, snap rate is down. Everything is down. It was Dave, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to make of this. I know that they've got the Raiders next week, so we could see more, but it just doesn't. I don't know. I'm not adding him and starting him anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like Alec Iomanor, like he's another guy that
Yeah,
I'm
you
okay
can
moving
drop him.
off of too. Like these guys all just kind of feel like roster cloggers. Like Tennessee was gift wrapped a
Right.
win yesterday, and that's not going to happen every single week. So like in a game where like it seemed like the Cardinals were like trying to lose, we saw a little bit of life from Calvin Ridley, but still what he had like 13 and a half PPR points or something like that. Like it was still nothing to write home about. Like this is the big breakout game, and it was still like, I guess that'll play as my flex. So yeah, I'm not really um too crazy about Calvin Ridley or Iowa at this point, unless we see a huge change from Cam Ward.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That was the week 5 eulogy there as we jump into the week 6 waiver wire. This was like a sad week. This was a really sad week to talk about, but really fun games. I was watching them all on the airplane on my phone. That Bucks Seahawks game was awesome to watch. Just awesome. Visually really appealing too. Just best uniform combo in the league. Putting those two together, it was great, man. So it was a lot of fun, but for fantasy, not so much. Dave, you and I will be back again on Wednesday with the week 6 flex episode. We'll be back on Thursday with the start, sits, and sleepers every single week. And as always, just want to make sure you guys are subscribed to the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show YouTube channel or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. And as always, want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.